Imagine finding out your wife's been lying to you about meeting up with her first love. Yeah, that one guy you thought she'd forgotten about. I'm just a regular guy, blindsided by the person I trusted most. So what do? You pack a bag, take your kid, and leave. But let me tell you, that was just the beginning. What happened next? I can't even make this up. Stick around, you're not going to believe how this all turned out. My friend, let me tell you a story. I have seen a lot in my life, but this experience reshaped my entire outlook. Back in college, I was that kind of guy who treated women with softness and respect, believing that giving everything would nurture the strongest relationships. But, as it turns out, giving too much can lead to a loss of respect. During my sophomore year, I learned this the hard way. 2 girlfriends left me, both saying I was just too soft. That was when I realized it was time to dial down the emotional generosity and maintain a little restraint in my actions and affections. Just because you care for someone doesn't mean you should give away every part of yourself. I met Lisa at a college party. It wasn't long after both of us had ended relationships with other people. Lisa had been with her boyfriend, Daniel, since high school, but he left her for a younger, more attractive girl he'd met during his first year in medical school. She refused to get more serious with him, so he simply found someone else. To make matters worse, Lisa's self-esteem had taken a big hit. She loved him deeply, and the breakup left her feeling inadequate. And, to my dismay, she never completely got over Daniel, which became a recurring issue for me. Lisa had her fair share of flaws, too. She enjoyed noisy parties a bit too much, and it didn't take long for me to realize trust could be challenging with her. Despite the age gap between us, I fell for her hard, deeply committed to the thought of spending my life with her. Knowing that she'd been in love with Daniel since the 8th grade didn't bother me initially. I was there for her and supported her as she worked on rebuilding her self-worth. It took time, but soon Lisa transformed into a confident, beautiful woman. I encouraged her to take up sports, and we spent hours together on the tennis courts. I proposed, and to my delight, she said yes. Once we graduated, we were quick to settle down. We saved up, bought a place of our own, and soon welcomed our first child, a son we named William. Our small town wasn't far from where both of our parents lived, just 50 or 60 miles away. Lisa and I worked in different fields, so we maintained separate work lives. It seemed that everything was just right, but life, as it does, had a twist in store that would change everything. One day, I noticed something strange. Lisa was dressed in a dress I had never seen before. It was unusual, especially since she said she was just going to work. She called me later that day. "Michael," she said, her voice light, "could you pick up Will from daycare?" "Sure," I replied, but I couldn't help but ask, "What's up?" "Oh, after work, I'm heading over to Maddie's," she explained. "She got a batch of the latest fashion magazines, and we're planning to go through them." "Okay, but when should I expect you?" "Around 9. I'll call if I'll be later," she assured me. "And by the way, I left my keys at home, so don't lock the door." At the end of my workday, I headed to pick up Will from daycare, and on the way, I ran into Taylor, an acquaintance who managed a travel agency in town. She greeted me enthusiastically and said, "Hey, Michael, I have 2 last-minute tickets available for tomorrow. It's a great deal." "Oh, really?" I responded, only half interested. "To Egypt, a top-rated resort in Sharm el-Sheikh," she continued excitedly. "You'll love it. Perfect for a family trip." I told her I'd think about it and give her a call. I didn't mention it to Lisa. I had too much on my mind. When I got home with Will, we started on dinner, and then my phone buzzed with a message from Lisa's college friend, Chris. We had become friends over the years, so I picked up without hesitation. "Hey, Mike, are you coming to the party tonight?" he asked. "Party?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Yeah, our class reunion. Everyone's going to be there, including Lisa's best friend, Maddie. And Daniel's even coming in from out of town." Daniel, I thought to myself. Lisa's first love. The one she hadn't quite let go of. "Is Lisa going to be there?" I inquired, a heavy feeling settling over me. "She should be," Chris replied. "Look, just come. And if you don't mind, Could you snap a few photos of the night? I'd love to see Lisa having a good time with everyone. I felt my pulse quicken. This wasn't what Lisa had told me. That night, I put Will to bed, and I found myself in a daze. As I waited, my phone lit up with photos from Chris. There was Lisa, laughing and dancing freely, seemingly without a care in the world. But it was the sight of her dancing with Daniel, her face alight with happiness, that struck a blow deep within me. The next day, I made up my mind. I took out my suitcase, called Taylor, and told her I'd take those tickets. Early the next morning, I packed our bags with a few essentials for Will and myself. Before heading out, I took the time to print every single photo Chris had sent. I hung them in the bedroom, a silent message that I knew everything. Then I called Taylor to finalize the tickets. Taylor, the deal's still on for those Egypt tickets, right? Can you arrange transport for us to the airport? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Absolutely. We'll leave first thing in the morning. I've got a top-tier hotel lined up for you right on the beach, too. Will it be just you and Lisa? No, I replied, suppressing the bitterness in my voice. Just me and my son, Will. I barely slept that night. I left Lisa's bags with her things at her friend Maddie's place. This wasn't about revenge or pettiness. I wanted her to understand the consequences of her actions, how deeply her choices had cut. I left our home with a clear mind, hoping that time away with Will would give me the clarity I needed. The next morning, before dawn, we were on the road. Will was still too young to understand what was happening, so I told him only what he needed to know. Mom had a last-minute work trip, so it'll be just us two. As we boarded the plane, I watched Will's face light up. The excitement of flying and heading to a new place filled him with joy. His innocent happiness felt like a small comfort, a reminder of what mattered most to me. When we landed in Sharm el-Sheikh, the warm, dry air greeted us. The resort was stunning, with vast, sandy beaches stretching out along the coast, the horizon speckled with coral reefs in shades of turquoise and emerald. After settling into our room, we made our way to the beach. Will took off running, splashing into the shallow waves, and laughing as he chased crabs across the sand. Watching him, I felt a wave of peace that had been missing for some time. The days slipped by, blending into a mix of beach outings, poolside fun, and exploration. Each morning, we'd wake early to wander through the gardens, and in the evenings we'd walk along the shore, watching the sun dip below the horizon. During one of those sunsets, we met a woman named Dana and her young daughter, Natalie. They spoke English, a comforting reminder of home. Dana had a warm smile, and Natalie's curiosity mirrored Will's, sparking an instant friendship between the two. Dana and I quickly fell into an easy rhythm of conversation. There was no pretense or awkwardness, just a shared understanding. She listened as I told her about Lisa, the betrayal, and the bewildering mix of emotions that had left me searching for answers. Dana wasn't judgmental. Instead, she empathized, sharing that she, too, was dealing with a crumbling marriage back home. Her husband's deception had left her feeling broken. Yet, like me, she was here for her child, hoping that a change of scenery might bring clarity. Dana offered me insights that I hadn't considered before, like how to create boundaries, how to move forward in a healthy way for Will's sake, and how to come to terms with a broken trust. I learned that in Egypt, I was forced to look at things from a distance, away from the familiar surroundings and everyday routines. We spent that evening discussing what it means to rebuild trust, not only with others but with ourselves. The next morning, Dana invited us to join them on an excursion to the local market. She had been there before, she said, and knew the ropes, which was reassuring. As we roamed through the stalls, the aroma of spices, freshly baked bread, and local food surrounded us. I found myself laughing, enjoying the adventure. Will and Natalie darted through the crowd, giggling and clutching little trinkets they'd bought from the vendors. Just as Dana had warned me, navigating the culture was a delicate dance, especially since I was there with my son but without my wife. She offered useful advice on how to avoid drawing unwanted attention, to be respectful of local customs, and to maintain a level of modesty that was appropriate for the place. Despite the initial challenge of adjusting, I found that the beauty of Egypt was in its people and traditions. Our days were filled with discovery, a welcome distraction from the weight that lingered in my heart. As our trip continued, Dana and I became each other's confidants, exchanging stories, sharing laughs, and opening up about the pain we were each experiencing. I couldn't help but notice how naturally we connected. She was kind, understanding, and most importantly, she listened without judgment. And while it was tempting to lose myself in her kindness, I kept my focus on Will and the purpose of this journey: to heal, to clear my head, and to figure out my next steps. I hadn't expected Lisa's actions to unravel me this way. Even as Dana and I grew closer, my mind often drifted back to Lisa and what her betrayal had cost us. We had been married for years, built a life together, shared dreams, and brought Will into the world with the belief that we'd give him a loving, united family. Yet here I was, 1,000 miles away, wondering if I could even face her again. As the week drew to a close, Dana and I decided to take the kids to a nearby water park. It was a sprawling oasis in the desert heat, with slides, lazy rivers, and enough activities to exhaust any kid. Watching Will and Natalie chase each other around, their laughter ringing out over the sound of rushing water, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. I wanted this joy for Will, this carefree, unburdened happiness. But a part of me wondered if this was the last time I'd see him laugh so freely. That evening, as we prepared to leave the water park, Dana looked at me and asked, "Do you think you can forgive her, Michael? Do you want to?" Her question hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of my unspoken fears. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "I want to, but I don't know if I can." She lied to me, and it wasn't just a small lie. She chose to meet him, to leave me in the dark. I just don't understand why. Dana nodded, her face etched with understanding. "Forgiveness isn't easy," she said softly. "It takes time. And sometimes, it's not about forgiving the other person. It's about forgiving yourself for trusting them. But no matter what you decide, Will needs you. He needs to know that he's loved." Her words struck a chord deep within me. She was right. Will was the priority, and whatever decisions I made had to keep his well-being at the center. The next morning, Dana and I shared a quiet breakfast together, a bittersweet reminder that our paths would soon diverge. Afterward, she handed me a small envelope with a simple note inside: "Take care of yourself, Michael. And remember, healing takes time." As we prepared to leave Egypt, I found myself lingering on the balcony of our hotel room, looking out at the sea with Will by my side. The weight of everything settled over me as I held him close, feeling the depth of my love for him and the need to protect him from the fallout of the choices we hadn't made. The flight home felt much longer than our journey out. Will slept beside me, exhausted from days of adventure. I couldn't help but replay Dana's words in my mind. Forgiving Lisa felt like an impossible task. She had shattered my trust, leaving me to pick up the pieces alone. I knew I needed to confront her, to give her a chance to explain, but every part of me resisted. The hurt, the betrayal, it was still too raw. And then there was the nagging thought of how this would affect Will. I wanted him to grow up knowing what love and trust looked like. Yet here I was, unsure of what the future held for us as a family. When we finally landed, exhaustion was etched into every fiber of my being. As I carried Will off the plane, I was surprised to see someone familiar waiting in the crowd. It was Lisa's friend, Sarah. Her face lit up when she saw us, and she walked over, her expression a mix of concern and relief. "Michael," she began, "we've been worried about you too. I wanted to be here to welcome you back." The tension was palpable. I could feel her waiting for me to say something, but I just nodded, still reeling from the trip, unsure of what would come next. Sarah lowered her voice and leaned in. "Lisa's been a wreck since you left," she said softly. She didn't know what to do, and when she realized what was happening, she knew she'd hurt you. But she didn't want to lose you. She asked me to be here, just to see how you were. I didn't respond. I stood there, caught between exhaustion and a storm of emotions. Seeing Sarah brought a new wave of tension I hadn't expected. Her words hung in the air, barely penetrating the numbness that had settled in since I'd found out the truth. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Sarah? I started, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. Does she know what she's asking for? Sarah looked down as if gathering her thoughts. Michael, I've known Lisa for a long time, and I know she regrets this. She didn't think she'd get caught up with Daniel. She thought it was just a simple reunion with old friends. But she realizes now that it was a mistake not to tell you everything. But she's scared. Scared that she lost you. There was no easy response, so I stayed silent, watching as Will shifted sleepily in my arms. I glanced at Sarah, then over her shoulder, seeing a familiar figure standing at a distance. Lisa. She had been waiting there all along, looking hesitant and visibly tense. Her face, pale under the airport lights, looked drawn and fragile. It was as if the weight of her decisions was etched into every line, every expression. Lisa approached slowly, her gaze flicking from Will to me. I knew this was the moment she had been dreading. The confrontation we both knew was inevitable. I took a step back, carefully setting Will down so he could continue sleeping, then looked straight at her. Michael, please. Lisa started, her voice breaking. Can we just talk? The words came out strained, as though the weight of the past days had worn her down, stripping her of any pretense or pride. I looked at her, remembering the times we had shared, the good and the bad, and realized I didn't know what to say. There was no handbook for this, no easy way to mend the fractures between us. But I owed it to her and to Will to at least hear her out. We'll talk, I finally said, my voice flat. But not here. I'll take Will home first. Lisa nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She knew there would be no forgiveness in my words, no sympathy. But for the first time, I saw a look in her eyes that seemed genuine, a raw understanding of the gravity of her actions. I gathered Will in my arms, feeling his soft breathing against my shoulder, and turned away. We drove home in silence. Once we got there, I settled Will into his bed and made my way to the living room, waiting for Lisa to join me. When she finally did, she looked vulnerable, as if the Lisa I knew had been stripped down to her most honest, flawed self. She sat down, folding her hands nervously, struggling to meet my eyes. Michael, she began, her voice trembling. I don't know where to start. I know what I did was wrong. I should have told you. I should have been open. I was afraid. Afraid of what, Lisa? I interrupted, the frustration spilling out in a way I hadn't intended. Afraid I'd ask you not to go? Or afraid I'd find out what you'd been up to all along? No, it wasn't like that, she said quickly, shaking her head. It was never about lying to you. I just didn't know how to explain. When I heard that Daniel would be there, I knew you'd have feelings about it, and I thought if I told you, you'd react exactly like this. Like this, I echoed bitterly, gesturing around us. Lisa, look at where we are. You put me in this position. You made these choices, and now you want me to understand why. She looked down, silent, as if struggling to piece together the words that would make me understand. I made a mistake, Michael. I got caught up in wanting to prove something, maybe even to myself. I didn't want to feel guilty or judged. I thought you'd think less of me if you knew I was meeting him. And so you lied. I finished, the bitterness settling into my voice. Lisa, marriage is built on trust. You know this. We have a son, a life together. Was it worth it? She opened her mouth as if to respond, then closed it, tears finally spilling over. She looked away, seemingly defeated. I don't know what to say to make this right, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. But I do love you, Michael. I love you, and I know I hurt you. I can't ask you to forgive me. I can only hope that, over time, you'll see that I'm truly sorry. The weight of her words settled over me. I wanted to believe her, but the hurt was still fresh, the anger too raw. For a long moment, we sat there in silence, the enormity of the situation pressing down on us. I need time, I finally said, breaking the silence. I need time to process this, to think. You broke something between us, Lisa. Something I'm not sure can be fixed. Lisa nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. I'll give you all the time you need. I watched her for a moment longer, seeing the regret etched into her face. I wanted to believe in the woman I had married, the mother of my child. But the wound was too deep. I turned away, walking out of the room without another word. In the days that followed, Lisa tried to keep things as normal as possible. She put on a brave face, playing with Will and keeping up appearances, but I could see the tension in her eyes, the unease that lingered just beneath the surface. We exchanged polite words, but our conversations felt hollow, a thin veneer covering the vast emptiness that had taken root between us. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, a text from Dana popped up on my phone. "Just checking in, Michael. Hope you and Will are doing well. Take care of yourself." A wave of warmth washed over me. Dana had been a friend when I needed one the most, a reminder that compassion and understanding could exist even when things seemed broken. I wanted to reply, to reach out to her, but something held me back. This was my battle, one I needed to face on my own. Over time, things with Lisa began to shift. There was an unspoken agreement between us to avoid discussing what had happened. Instead, we focused on Will, on creating a stable home for him amid the uncertainty. But beneath the surface, the rift remained. I could feel it in the way we moved around each other, careful not to touch or brush too close, as if one wrong step could bring everything crashing down. One night, after putting Will to bed, Lisa found me in the kitchen. She seemed hesitant, standing in the doorway, watching me in silence. "Michael," she finally said, breaking the stillness. "I know this isn't easy. I can see it every day, the distance between us. But I want you to know, I'm not giving up on us. I made a mistake, a terrible one, and I know it will take time. But I want to rebuild what we had, if you'll let me." Her words surprised me. She had been so quiet, so restrained these past weeks, that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to hear her speak with such conviction. I met her gaze, searching her face for any trace of dishonesty, any sign that she was anything less than genuine. "And how do you plan to do that, Lisa?" I asked, my voice steady but guarded. "How do you plan to rebuild something that you broke?" "I don't have all the answers," she admitted, her voice soft. "But I know I want to try. For us, for Will. I'll do whatever it takes, Michael." I nodded, considering her words. Part of me wanted to believe her, to believe that this was something we could work through. But another part, a larger part, held back, unwilling to let go of the hurt so easily. "Then start by being honest," I replied. "No more secrets, no more half-truths. If we're going to try, it has to be real this time. You need to show me that I can trust you again." Lisa nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "I will. I promise, Michael." The following weeks were a slow process of rebuilding. Lisa and I began to spend more time together, talking about our lives, our hopes, and our fears. I could see the effort she was putting in, the small ways she tried to show me that she was committed to making things right. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. One day, we took Will to the park. As we watched him play, Lisa reached out and took my hand. The gesture was small, but it felt like a tentative step toward healing. For the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way forward. But even as things improved between us, the memory of those days in Egypt lingered. Dana's friendship had been a lifeline during one of the darkest times in my life. And as I sat there, holding Lisa's hand, I realized that moving forward would mean letting go of the past, of the hurt and betrayal that had nearly torn us apart. It was a choice only I could make, a decision that would shape the future of our family. And for the first time, I felt ready to face it. As days turned into weeks, I worked to find the balance between forgiveness and self-preservation. The hurt from Lisa's deception still lingered, but I was learning to live with it, slowly, one day at a time. We kept life as normal as possible for Will's sake. Our interactions became friendlier, but there was a new distance, a fragile line we both hesitated to cross. One evening, as we sat on the porch after putting Will to bed, Lisa finally broke the silence. "Michael," she began, her voice quiet, "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, about why I acted the way I did." I glanced at her, caught off guard by her openness. "Go on," I replied, careful not to let my own guardedness show too much. She took a deep breath, as if preparing herself to relive the mistakes she'd made. "I think I was trying to prove something to myself, something I didn't even know I needed to prove. Seeing Daniel again, it felt like revisiting a part of my life I hadn't fully let go of. And instead of being honest about it, I tried to bury it, to keep it from you, and that was the worst thing I could have done." Her words hung in the air, each one a confession, a small attempt to explain the actions that had torn our family apart. I wanted to understand, but a part of me struggled with the idea that she had chosen to keep such a fundamental truth hidden from me. "You knew how much it would hurt me, Lisa," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "You knew, and you still did it." She nodded, her face a mixture of regret and acceptance. "Yes, I knew, and I can't change what I did. But I want to be better. I want to make things right if you'll let me." I looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes, and I felt something shift inside me. There was a part of me that still loved her, that wanted to believe in the person I had married. But there was also the pain, the deep-seated hurt that made it hard to fully trust again. "Let's take it one day at a time," I finally said. "We don't have to have all the answers right now. But if we're going to make this work, it has to be based on honesty. I can't go through this again, Lisa." "I won't." She nodded, a small smile appearing on her face. "One day at a time," she agreed, her voice filled with a fragile hope. The next few weeks felt like walking on eggshells. Lisa and I took small steps toward rebuilding our relationship, finding moments to reconnect in the midst of everyday life. We started going for walks with Will after dinner, visiting the local park and watching him play on the swings. It was a simple routine, but it felt like a way to ground ourselves, to remind each other of what we had built together. But even as things improved between us, the memories of that time in Egypt, of the solace I'd found in Dana's friendship, continued to linger. I knew that if I wanted to move forward with Lisa, I had to confront those feelings and let go of the past. It was a daunting thought, but one that I knew was necessary. One evening, as Lisa and I sat in the living room after Will had gone to bed, I brought it up. "Lisa," I began, choosing my words carefully, "I need to tell you something. During the time we were apart, when I took Will to Egypt, I met someone." Her face went pale, and I saw a flash of fear in her eyes. But she kept her composure, waiting for me to continue. "Her name was Dana. We met by chance at the resort. She was going through her own struggles, and we ended up becoming friends. She listened, offered advice, and helped me get through a really difficult time. There was nothing romantic between us, but she was there for me when I felt like I was falling apart." Lisa nodded, her expression a mixture of understanding and sadness. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. "I'm not proud of the fact that I pushed you to that point. I should have been the one there for you, and instead, I was the reason you were hurting." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared pain filling the room. It was a strange feeling, this mix of sorrow and relief, as if acknowledging what had happened allowed us to finally release some of the tension that had been simmering between us. "She helped me see things more clearly," I continued. "She helped me realize that forgiveness isn't something that happens overnight. It's a process and it takes time. And I want to give us that time, Lisa. I want to give us a chance." She reached over, taking my hand in hers. "I want that too, Michael. I want to earn back your trust. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." The following days felt lighter, as if the air between us had finally cleared. We began to find comfort in each other's company again, sharing laughter and moments of closeness that reminded me of the love we had once shared. It was fragile, but it was real. As time passed, we focused on strengthening our relationship, both for ourselves and for Will. We started going to family therapy, a place where we could openly discuss our feelings and work through the issues that had nearly destroyed us. It wasn't easy, but with each session, we made progress, slowly piecing together the fragments of our relationship. One evening, after a particularly emotional therapy session, Lisa and I went for a walk. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood. And as we walked, Lisa looked over at me, her expression thoughtful. "Michael," she said, her voice hesitant. "I want you to know that I don't take any of this for granted. I know I nearly lost you, and that you're choosing to stay, to work through this with me. It means everything to me." I nodded, feeling the sincerity in her words. "I believe you, Lisa, and I want you to know that I'm here because I believe in us. I believe in the family we've built, and I want to protect that." We walked in silence for a while, both of us absorbing the weight of the journey we had been on. It wasn't the path I had imagined for us, but it was the one we were on, and we were choosing to walk it together. As we reached our front door, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a beginning, a chance to rebuild something meaningful out of the pieces of our broken trust. Months passed, and our lives began to settle into a new rhythm. The pain of the past still lingered, but it no longer controlled us. We had learned to live with it, to accept it as a part of our story without letting it define us. One evening, as we sat in the backyard watching Will play, Lisa turned to me, her eyes filled with a quiet determination. "Michael," she said, "I want us to be stronger than we were before. I want us to build something that can withstand anything. I don't want to live in fear of the past. I want to create a future that we can both be proud of." Her words struck a chord deep within me. It was a reminder that, despite everything we had been through, we were still here, still choosing each other. "I want that too, Lisa," I replied, my voice steady. "I want us to create a future that's built on trust, on honesty, and on the love that brought us together in the first place." We sat there, watching the sunset together, feeling a sense of hope that had once seemed impossible. It wasn't the life we had planned, but it was a life we were building together, one day at a time. In the months that followed, Lisa and I grew closer. We continued therapy, finding new ways to communicate, to support each other, and to nurture the love that had once felt lost. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. Will thrived in the environment we were creating, his laughter filling our home with a warmth that reminded us of the importance of family. He was the reason we had fought to rebuild, the reason we had chosen to forgive and move forward. One day, we received an invitation in the mail. Dana was getting married and had invited us to the wedding. The invitation was a reminder of the time I had spent healing, of the person who had been there for me when I needed a friend the most. It was bittersweet, but it also felt like a closing chapter, a sign that it was time to move forward fully. Lisa and I discussed the invitation, and in the end, we decided to attend. It felt like the final step in our journey of healing, a way to honor the past while embracing the future. As we sat at the wedding, watching Dana and her new husband exchange vows, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for so long. I reached over, taking Lisa's hand in mine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt complete. It had been a journey marked by pain, betrayal, and the struggle to forgive. But in the end, it had brought us closer, reminding us of the strength of love and the power of forgiveness. Lisa leaned over, resting her head on my shoulder. "Thank you for staying," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. I squeezed her hand, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the path we had chosen to walk together. "Thank you for choosing to fight for us," I replied softly, and in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. We had been tested, and we had emerged stronger, bound by a love that had been forged in the fires of forgiveness. The wedding was beautiful, a celebration of new beginnings. It felt like a fitting close to a chapter that had been so turbulent for me. Being there with Lisa, hand in hand, watching Dana find her own happiness, made me feel like we were finally moving forward, like the wounds that had once defined us were beginning to heal. After the wedding, we returned home, falling back into our daily routines. There was a peace between us now, a shared understanding that we had both chosen to stay, to rebuild, and to nurture the family we had worked so hard to create. Therapy continued to help us, guiding us through moments of insecurity, teaching us to trust each other again, and giving us tools to communicate openly. One weekend, as Lisa and I were making breakfast, Will came bounding into the kitchen, his face alight with excitement. "Mom! Dad!" he called out, waving a crumpled piece of paper. "Guess what? There's a father-son baseball game next weekend at school. Can we go, Dad? Can we?" I looked down at his eager face, and a warmth spread through me. "Of course, buddy," I replied, ruffling his hair. "We'll show them our best moves." Will's face lit up, and he ran off to play, already buzzing with the anticipation of the big day. I exchanged a smile with Lisa, who was watching the exchange with a tender expression. "You're really great with him," she said softly, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Thank you for being such a wonderful father to him." Her words brought a lump to my throat, and I squeezed her hand in return. In moments like these, I felt the strength of our family, the bond we had worked so hard to preserve. Despite everything, we had managed to create a loving home for Will, a place where he could feel safe and cherished. The days leading up to the baseball game were filled with excitement and preparations. Will insisted on practicing every day after school, and I joined him, feeling a new sense of connection with my son. We laughed, stumbled, and bonded over missed catches and home runs. It was simple, pure, and it reminded me of what truly mattered. When the big day arrived, Lisa packed a picnic for us, and we headed to the field, surrounded by other parents and children. The sun was shining, the air filled with laughter and cheers, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a genuine sense of joy. As Will and I played, I saw Lisa on the sidelines, cheering us on with an enthusiasm that brought a smile to my face. Watching her there, supporting us, filled me with a sense of pride and gratitude. She was making an effort, showing up in every way that mattered, and I could see the sincerity in her actions. After the game, as we sat together under a tree, enjoying the picnic Lisa had prepared, I felt a contentment that had once seemed impossible. Will was busy telling us every detail of the game, his face animated as he relived each moment. I glanced at Lisa, who was listening to him with a look of pure adoration, and I realized how lucky we were to have this moment. Later that evening, after we had put Will to bed, Lisa and I sat together in the living room, reflecting on the day. "Thank you for today," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "It meant so much to Will and to me." I nodded, feeling a wave of emotion that I hadn't anticipated. "It was a good day," I replied, my voice thick with sincerity. "A really good day." She leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. We had been through so much, but we were here, together, rebuilding our lives one step at a time. In the weeks that followed, our relationship continued to strengthen. We found joy in the small moments, in the laughter we shared, and in the quiet companionship that had once felt so natural. It was as if we were rediscovering each other, peeling back the layers of hurt and anger to find the love that had brought us together in the first place. One evening, after a family dinner, Lisa suggested a weekend getaway, a chance for us to reconnect away from the distractions of everyday life. At first, I was hesitant, unsure if we were ready for something so intimate, but I could see the hope in her eyes, the desire to make things right, and I found myself agreeing. We arranged for Will to stay with my parents, and the following weekend, we set off for a small cabin by the lake. The drive there was filled with easy conversation, laughter, and a sense of anticipation that reminded me of our early days together. When we arrived, the cabin was cozy and welcoming, with a view of the lake that took my breath away. We spent the evening by the fire, reminiscing about old memories, laughing at stories we had told 100 times before. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to reconnect without the weight of the past bearing down on us. The next day, we spent the morning hiking, exploring the woods, and enjoying the quiet beauty of nature. We found a secluded spot by the lake and sat there, watching the water ripple in the gentle breeze. It was a moment of pure serenity, a reminder of the simple joys that life had to offer. As we sat there, Lisa reached over and took my hand, her gaze filled with a tenderness that took me by surprise. "Michael," she began, her voice soft, "I know I've said this before, but I want you to know how much I regret the choices I made. I can see now how deeply they hurt you, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if that's what it takes." Her words were filled with such sincerity that I felt a wave of emotion rise within me. In that moment, I saw her not as the woman who had hurt me, but as the woman I had loved for so many years, the mother of my child, the person who had been by my side through every challenge. "I know, Lisa," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. "I know you regret it, and I believe you. I think I'm finally ready to let go of the hurt, to forgive you." A look of relief washed over her face, and she squeezed my hand, her eyes filling with tears. We sat there in silence, the unspoken forgiveness passing between us, healing the wounds that had once seemed insurmountable. That evening, as we sat by the fire in the cabin, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. We talked about our future, about the life we wanted to build together, and I realized that forgiveness had set us free. It had allowed us to move beyond the pain, to embrace the love that had once felt lost. When we returned home, we brought that sense of peace with us. Our lives were far from perfect, but we had found a new strength, a resilience that had been born from the challenges we had faced. Our relationship was stronger, grounded in a trust that had been rebuilt through honesty, vulnerability, and forgiveness. Will noticed the change too. He seemed happier, more secure, as if he could sense the stability that had returned to our family. We spent more time together, laughing, playing, and creating memories that would become the foundation of our new life. As the months passed, Lisa and I continued to work on our relationship, nurturing the love that had brought us together in the first place. We celebrated our milestones, big and small, finding joy in the journey we had chosen to take together. One day, as we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Lisa turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Michael," she said, "I've been thinking about everything we've been through, about how close we came to losing it all, and I realized something important." I looked at her, curious. "What's that?" She smiled, a soft, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I realized that love isn't just about the good times, the easy moments. It's about the hard times too. It's about choosing each other, even when things get tough. And I want you to know that I'll keep choosing you every single day." Her words filled me with a warmth that was both comforting and profound. In that moment, I knew that we had come full circle, that we had found a way to rebuild the trust, the love, and the commitment that had once felt lost. "I'll keep choosing you too, Lisa," I replied, my voice filled with emotion. And as we sat there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey we had taken, for the love that had endured, and for the life we had rebuilt together. It wasn't the life we had planned, but it was a life filled with love, forgiveness, and a commitment that would carry us through whatever challenges lay ahead. Our lives settled into a peaceful rhythm over the following year. The constant tension that once clouded our days was replaced with a calm understanding. We still had our moments of doubt, but they were fleeting. Lisa and I had learned to communicate in ways we hadn't before, listening without judgment and speaking with honesty. Will was thriving, too, soaking in the newfound stability and closeness between us. One night, after a quiet family dinner, I found myself reflecting on how much we had all changed. Lisa, once so guarded and hesitant, had become open, thoughtful, and attuned to our family's needs. The mistakes she'd made felt like a distant memory, a part of our story that we no longer had to relive. Instead, we focused on what we could build from here, on creating the life we both wanted. Then, unexpectedly, I received a message from Dana. It was a brief note, just checking in to see how I was doing. She mentioned that she and her husband were expecting a child and that she felt a deep gratitude for the friendship we'd shared during our time in Egypt. Reading her message stirred up emotions I hadn't felt in a while. It reminded me of the pain and confusion I'd gone through, but also of the healing I had experienced. I realized how much Dana's kindness had meant to me during those dark days, and I was genuinely happy for her, grateful that she'd found her own happiness. I replied with my congratulations, wishing her the best. When I put down my phone, I felt a weight lift, as if I'd finally closed a door that had been lingering in my mind. Afterward, I shared the message with Lisa, I wanted her to know everything, to understand that I wasn't hiding anything from her. She helped me through a tough time, I admitted. But reading her message now, I see it for what it was, a friendship that came from a shared understanding. I'm happy for her, and I'm grateful that our lives have moved in the direction they have. Lisa looked at me, a warmth in her eyes. Thank you for telling me, Michael. I appreciate it more than you know. It means a lot to me that you're open about this, that there's nothing between us but honesty. We shared a quiet moment, one filled with the kind of trust that can only be built through hard work and a willingness to forgive. I felt grateful for her acceptance, for her understanding, and for the journey that had brought us here. In the following months, our lives continued to unfold with a steady, comforting rhythm. We spent weekends exploring nearby parks, going on small adventures with Will, and finding joy in the little things that we had once taken for granted. Each experience felt like a new beginning, a reminder of the life we had chosen to create. One evening, as we were putting Will to bed, he looked up at us with a curious expression. "Mom, Dad," he asked, "do you think we could get a dog?" Lisa and I exchanged a surprised look. Will had never mentioned wanting a pet before, and the request took us both by surprise. But seeing the excitement and hope in his eyes, we couldn't help but smile. "We'll talk about it," I replied, chuckling. "But having a dog is a big responsibility, buddy." Will grinned, his excitement barely contained. "I'll take care of it, I promise. I'll feed it, walk it, and everything." That night, Lisa and I discussed it, weighing the pros and cons. It was a big decision, but in the end, we both agreed that it could be a wonderful addition to our family. The next weekend, we took Will to the local animal shelter, where he immediately fell in love with a small, scrappy dog with bright eyes and an infectious energy. As we brought the dog home, Will named him Max, and the two of them became inseparable. Max brought a new energy to our home, filling it with laughter, playful chaos, and the kind of joy that only a pet can bring. Watching Will take on the responsibility of caring for Max gave Lisa and me a renewed sense of purpose as parents. We were building a life filled with love, resilience, and memories that would shape who Will would become. In the months that followed, our family felt stronger, more connected than ever. Max quickly became a beloved member of our family, joining us on our weekend outings, snuggling up on the couch during movie nights, and providing a new source of companionship for Will. Our home, once strained by unspoken hurts, had transformed into a haven of warmth and happiness. One evening, as Lisa and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, she looked at me, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Michael," she began, her voice soft, "I've been thinking about everything we've been through and what it's taught us. I know we've moved past a lot of the pain, but I want you to know, I'll never forget what it took for us to get here." I turned to her, feeling the depth of her words. "Neither will I, Lisa. But I also think that, in a strange way, it made us stronger. We've been tested, and we came out on the other side. I don't think anything could break us now." She smiled, her eyes reflecting a quiet strength. "I believe that too, and I want to keep building this life with you, to keep choosing each other every day." Her words filled me with a sense of peace, a certainty that we were exactly where we were meant to be. We had been through so much, but we had come out stronger, bound by a love that had been tested and strengthened through adversity. As we sat there, watching the sky change from hues of orange to soft purples and blues, I felt a deep gratitude for the life we had created. It wasn't the life we had imagined when we first fell in love, but it was a life filled with resilience, growth, and a love that had weathered every storm. In the following months, our lives continued to blossom. Lisa and I grew closer, our bond deepening with each passing day. We found joy in the little things, the quiet moments that once went unnoticed. Our family became our sanctuary, a place where we could be ourselves, free from the worries and stresses of the outside world. We celebrated milestones together, birthdays, anniversaries, and even the small victories, like Will's first time scoring a goal in soccer or Max learning a new trick. Each celebration felt like a testament to the journey we had taken, a reminder of the strength we had found in each other. One evening, as we were sitting together on the porch, Lisa reached over, taking my hand in hers. "Michael," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I want you to know how grateful I am for everything, for the love, the forgiveness, and the life we've created. I know it hasn't been easy, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world." I squeezed her hand, feeling a surge of gratitude for the woman beside me, for the journey we had taken, and for the love that had endured through every trial. "I feel the same way, Lisa," I replied softly. "I don't think I could have gotten through any of this without you. You've taught me what it means to love, to forgive, and to fight for what truly matters." We sat there, wrapped in the quiet comfort of each other's presence. The weight of the past lifted, leaving only the warmth of the present and the promise of the future. As the years went by, our family continued to grow, not in numbers but in love, in understanding, and in the strength we had built together. Will grew older, his laughter and curiosity filling our home, and Max remained by his side, a loyal companion through every adventure. Looking back, I realized that the journey we had taken, the struggles we had faced, had shaped us into the family we were meant to be. It had taught us the value of forgiveness, the power of resilience, and the importance of choosing each other every day. We weren't the same people we had once been, but in a way we were better, stronger, wiser, and bound by a love that had been tested and proven true. It was a love that would carry us through whatever challenges lay ahead, a love that had been forged in the fires of adversity and had emerged stronger, brighter, and more enduring than ever. And as I sat there, holding Lisa's hand, watching the stars appear one by one in the night sky, I knew that this was the life I had always wanted. A life filled with love, forgiveness, and a family that would stand the test of time. Time flowed naturally, blending into memories, laughter, and love. Lisa and I had found a way to exist together peacefully, and our family thrived. Will continued to grow, and we both watched with pride as he blossomed into a compassionate, joyful young boy. Our lives took on a warm, familiar rhythm: work, school, dinners together, weekend outings, and the little moments in between that stitched our days together. Then, one quiet weekend, Lisa brought up an idea that would reshape our lives yet again. "Michael," she began one morning over coffee, "I've been thinking, what would you think about moving somewhere with more space? Maybe something a bit outside the city where we can grow, where Will and Max could have more room to explore." It was something we had never seriously considered, but her words sparked a sense of adventure. The thought of building a home in a place where we could create even more memories, where Will could run freely, and we could enjoy the outdoors, felt like a natural progression in the life we were building. After some discussion and many trips to nearby neighborhoods and small towns, we found it. A house on the outskirts, nestled between open fields and trees, with a yard that stretched far enough for endless games of tag and catch. It was everything we could have dreamed of. We moved in the following spring, the fresh air and open spaces breathing new life into our family. Watching Will and Max roam freely, laughing and exploring, brought a renewed sense of purpose and excitement. One evening, a few weeks after settling in, Lisa and I sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. The gentle hum of crickets filled the air, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves around us. There was a quiet contentment between us, a shared joy that felt as steady and unwavering as the earth beneath our feet. "I feel like we've finally found our place," Lisa said softly, her hand resting on mine. "This home, this life, it feels complete." I nodded, feeling a deep gratitude for the journey that had brought us here. "It does. It's like everything we've been through has led us to this moment, to this life. I couldn't imagine it any other way." We sat there in silence, basking in the beauty of the moment, knowing that we had finally built the life we had always dreamed of. Over the years, our family grew not in numbers but in depth, in the bond that had been forged through trials, forgiveness, and resilience. Lisa and I became not only partners but best friends, confidants who could share everything, from the big dreams to the small, mundane details of daily life. The mistakes and pain of the past had become distant memories, reminders of the strength and love that had carried us through. We watched as Will entered his teenage years, his curiosity blossoming into a passion for sports, academics, and the simple pleasures of life. We encouraged him to explore, to follow his interests, and to never lose sight of the values we had instilled in him.